lasso Jam den jam be yong ba sa zo lo kong ge lo de dim nyen den nam da rab sara ve chin ye dun gun ye jin zi ni je tu kra le wan zen kong da si be zun re ma ri men tam ngare ki ze ven ro zoi gun lai pu je dar yin lai zhui jue yong den song ro da rai che ro nyo mo nye long le je chao ro ze jen na ma re men se re dong ra nyo gu jing ye jen ze ra je nam den he da ji sa ju tar sun yin den lu zo ja ze tu yu gu Chun rai chu dai chu ni jen de da le mes jan be yong la du ze den che che ra sre che da le de mo men pa ra sra ne ka dan den je jong lo to ba ye lo zhe po de nong wa za du so Dusum Sanje Dam Jejen Wo Kansum Jeje Jalvo Ridon Jenkuri Jamzo Chabda Garden Tsungpa Me Pala Jarve Ongbo Karma Be Shavla Govera Du De Sha Tsa Xin Chödrak Chabzo Chiwo Dadong Semje Damje Lo Chu Zun Robra Jenje Lopshi Chölam Do Longwara Jenje Lopshi Lam Churva Sarva Jenje Lopshi Chunai Shi Zo Charva Jenje La Paran Zai Do Solo Dusum Sanje Dam Jeje Ngo Ridan Jenkura Jamzo Chabda Garden Tsungpa Me Ba Kansum Chuji Jalbo Para Jalve Ongbo Karma Be Shavla Govara Du De Kibe Sha Tsa Xin Chödo Chabzo Chiwo Jenje La Paran Zai Do Solo Dadong Semje Damje Lo Chu Zun Robra Jenje Lopshi Chu Lam Do Longwara Jenje Lopshi Lam Churba Sirva Jenje Lopshi Chunai Shi Su Charva Jenje La Paran Zai Do So Dusum Sanje Dam Jeje Ngo Ridan Jenkura Jamzo Chabda Garden Tsungpa Me Ba Kansum Chuji Jalbo Pala Jalve Ongbo Karma Be Shavla Govera Du De Kibe Sha Tsa Lo Chödo Chabzo Chiwo Shenje La Paran Zai Do Solo Dadong Semje Damje Lo Chu Zun Robra Jenje Lopshi Chu Lam Do Longwara Jenje Lopshi Lam Churva Serva Jenje Lopshi Chunai Shi Su Charva Shenje La Paran Zai Do Soro Kongda Shu Ju Donggen Jegen Na Deshe Lomura Churva Kongso Ta Tendr Tembe Chöje Charmbe Je Sembaran De Badam Jendr Che La Ike Dong Lu Dong Ne Jen Ke Chubam Da Dong Mi Ke Nam Dang Chova Gunje Draki Chi Samba De Da Ke Du Da Ki Chö Dun To La So De Ne Ta Sa Sho Kang Du Chu Ne Dambe Chö De Jase La Ne So De Ma Sen Nang Kin Yue Na Sang Me Jabsun Rove Sem Tang Shangchup De Sem Jepa Sar Tam Ne Sen Ro Nang
Khenpo Rinpoche asks all of you, the viewers, wherever you may be, to begin by taking refuge in the three jewels, the three objects of refuge, and then generate the Bodhi mind. And with that as your basis, please listen attentively to the explanations of the sacred Buddha Dharma that will be given.
Lasso, ta kasan jertan yong lin jin rabote shu charje. Ta yong ngul tu bare.
So in the previous weekend, we covered the introduction to the text. Today we will begin with the first of the 37 practices of a bodhisattva, in terms of what a bodhisattva does.
Chöji Khenpo, Chöji Tsawa, Shangchip Sem Rinpoche Korndi Shuyung Tu, then number Tsangme Yang Yang Tu Le Shangchip Sem Sing the Karim Bate, Chimbache Nongro Nang, Teje. Ta lo mangbo chigren da shongchu sem kor ta yong chenpo so ro dang thi gen ro dang che ne ne shu de ba tre ta ngara ran da ke we yun den da lam gam pe nyam nyong me na yang
Lasso
Lama Tampan Namji Song the Shu Deva Yintu, Tang Anzo Yamnenji Kesi, Bena Gam Chun, Gam Jab Sete, Yong Dag Tin Anzo Shete Giorwa.
Gam Jab Second.
Meditation, some message. Meditation gets our mamma, the Shanju Sem the Tucson. Tea in the Shanju Sem La. Lord Young Matum Na Mefimbare Madananda, Lagam Night. Teen the Harina and the Corting, Ta Kanshi Mashui, Jopo Tsari, some Tangme, Tetul Jaronan.
Lasso. So, the Buddha, the Bhagavan, Buddha Shakyamuni of our era, or Buddha Shakyamuni, who is the Buddha of our era, explained that the body-mind is the very root, the very heart, the very core of the Buddha Dharma. Thus, one needs to make the body-mind one's main focus in terms of the various practices of the Buddhist path, studies, contemplation, and meditation. Now, in today's Buddhist centers, the majority of people, if not all, in fact all, frequently speak of meditation, voice an interest in meditation, again and again and again. This is what one hears about most in Buddhist centers as to the members, the practitioners in those centers. Khenpo Rinpoche would like to, or he is here trying, by way of these explanations, to instill in you the importance of truly generating the body-mind, making efforts to generate the body-mind, as the body-mind is the mindset which is the true basis of whatever one does on the Buddhist path. Studies, contemplation, or meditation. Therefore, he asks you to recollect the explanations that have been given and that are to be given again and again and again, till you truly know and understand them. Khenpo Rinpoche says for many, many years, in fact decades, he's been teaching the body mind in the centers where he teaches regularly, and also the ones where there might have been just 1 or 2 visits. He says he's tried to the best of his ability to explain the body-mind for decades. He says regarding his own person that he's not an accomplished scholar nor an accomplished meditator. However, he's had the fortune to meet with many, many Buddhist masters of our time, and he has received teachings, instructions, and the like from those masters, which to some degree, in his view, has made him capable as a person teaching the details of the body-mind to others. So he would like to ask all of you, the viewers, to take this to heart and truly apply the explanations and the instructions on the body-mind till your efforts bear fruit, meaning you may have made efforts in terms of being able to generate the mind, you may have made efforts in cultivating the body-mind to some extent, and so on and so forth. Of course, this will be very individual. However, point made is that he would like to ask all of you to take to heart these explanations and truly integrate the explanations that will be given. In specific, since the majority, if not all, members of various Buddhist centers and those interested in Buddhism are mainly concerned with the practice of meditation, because, as was said, the body-mind is the basis for meditation. Without the body-mind, meditation in Mahayana Buddhism isn't really possible, or is not possible. Therefore, Khenpo Rinpoche would like to stress the importance of making sure that the practitioner, whomever he or she may be, sees to that his or her efforts take the focus of the body-mind. Because whatever meditation one tries to do without having gone through this process properly, without having properly generated the body-mind, will not bear fruit. Whether one recites mantras in the hundreds of thousands, whether one spends weeks, months, years meditating on a yidam, and so on and so forth, without this basis, the basis of the body-mind, the efforts will not bear fruit.
Perna.
Tarma som det så går. Tang är det. So this is Khenpo Rinpoche's aim with this series of lectures, to give everyone who attends what they need in order to be able to generate the body mind. And as he mentioned earlier, he has given extensive explanations for many, many years previously, and he'll do so again during this course. Now, he really wants to emphasize the importance of taking to heart what the text explains and the additional explanations he gives, because that will make someone who takes these instructions to heart capable of making progress on the path to enlightenment. So therefore, he has not set a time frame for the beginning and the end of this course. He will simply continue for as long as he sees necessary in order to communicate what practitioners truly need in order to make progress in their meditation and on the path to enlightenment. That is his aim. And with respect to the text itself, there are 3 parts. Or the text can be divided into 3 sections. I should say. To begin with, the author, Togme, sets forth the causes for generating the body mind. In the second segment of the text, he explains about the body mind itself, how to generate the body mind itself. And in the third section, the author explains about the various trainings a bodhisattva engages in, what a bodhisattva does.
Lasso, teacher on the Tajutella, Peche, Sholoka Guyina, Juina Jindu, Tatina and Sholoka Tangutre.
With respect to the first section, the causes for generating the body mind, there are 9 or 10 verses. We will see further on whether it's 9 or 10. Today we will begin with the first of the 9 causes for, or the 9 causes for generating the body mind.
Tate Sholoka Koran Kanderesana, Tanjor, Truchin, Yeka, Tobdun Der, Dayin, Korbe, Sole, Rashe Shir, Nyendo, Sendu, Yelba Mepani, Nin, Sem, Gopa Jase Lale Yin, Sonhet.
Gopa, jag menar Gompa.
Gamba inside the signal of Gopas Tisha.
Lasso.
Gamba Ranre.
Gompa, Jurgore,
Gamba Jurgampa.
Lasso. So, the first of these 9 verses reads as follows. Once having gained the free and well-favored human birth, so hard to come by and so powerful, persevering steadily, night and day, to free yourself and others from the ocean of samsara. To listen, reflect, and meditate is the practice of a bodhisattva. Now, I'd like to point out here in terms of the first line, which in the English read, once having gained the free and well-favored human rebirth. The text says, once having gained the great vessel with the great vessel. The word vessel was in the English translation substituted with the human rebirth, simply because the idea was that to spell out the human rebirth, which the great vessel is a simile of, would be easier in terms of people who may not be familiar with that simile. So it's just an additional detail in terms of the translation. Mm-hmm.
대인도 단대 동보 달 세외 책대 책코라는 거 고하시나 버게라 달 세대 간체나 양 제주도서 연킨지라 달 송마시.
So the human birth is free and well-favored. The word free is a reference to the fact that some human beings have a number of circumstances which give them the freedom to practice the path. So it's about being able to spend one's time doing that, dedicating oneself to doing just this. Of course, that may involve sacrifices on the on the part of the person who chooses or who makes that choice. However, the person's mindset is such that the practice of the path is more important to him or her than a comfortable life that is safe and secure in terms of what one may or may not expect during one's lifetime. So it's about an individual who, because of his own mindset and because of the effects of previous actions, is free to practice the path, is free to primarily spend his or her life practicing the path.
대체 용도 다 달바 매 받들라.
jorva chi song yo ma
여바 휴메.
da that's kawa chi song yo dalva me pa de khare re song ya erego
다 달바 스게테 달바 매 빼게 nenga 들라. 제베 매 컴바직. 제와 렌탕나 때네.
yeah
달바 매 바직 Kesi Jewa Milu Yongdashi Longba Yina Yang, Charji Jinji La Dene, Chödrak, Longkam Mebaki Ni.
Chaltu Chungwa Rava. Daddy Legi Wong to Chungwa Kogore Kandishik Chaltangde.
That lay Tumbu Yuvache, Mang Chewa the Charji, Doju Yuvache.
Doju
Yuvache.
Da Penangarang Damkani Yuva, Tene Chaltu Jungwe Mi Kompati, Dangarang Dogadama Songna de Domsong Latene.
Yeah. Charge me come Pacheva. But Nangana Jesona, the Jemera, Chile me come Pachadic.
Lasso.
Tene, Tagana Shiganga, Pena, Semyum took Devate, Miluina took Devatapa, she was so Giorva. Oh, Tendechico. Then is something in the Campa. Chick de Sum Daujiungudo.
Semten la mi compa.
Kajing I need today.
La reta di calantrite.
Richard.
So, there are various sets of 8 circumstances that vary in the various sets that hinder someone from practicing the sacred Buddha Dharma. In terms of the first of these 3 sets, there are presumably more sets of circumstances that hinder individuals from engaging in the practice of the Buddhist path. The first set of 8 is primarily concerned with place of rebirth and some of the circumstances of the rebirth in question that hinder the individual from dedicating himself to or at all coming in contact with the Buddhist path. First, the first of the 8 in terms of rebirth is that of a hellish existence. Once reborn in this type of existence, the individual has no freedom at all. The individual doesn't, even in terms of his own mind, have the possibility of even thinking of the Buddha Dharma because of the extraordinarily grave circumstances of suffering he's trapped in consequence of his previous actions. So, if we think of a being who's taken rebirth in a hellish existence, that individual is continually, without any respite whatsoever, afflicted by the physical circumstances of suffering in this rebirth, as well as his mind being continually afflicted by or tortured by, as it were, states of mind that make for the worst kind of mental suffering that one can imagine. Therefore, in a hellish existence, there is no choice for an individual to do something other than what he's trapped in. It's 100% bondage type of existence, whereas a human being is also afflicted by or can be afflicted by a mindset of a very high level of affliction. There may be a great deal of suffering. However, a human being always has the possibility of changing his or her circumstances. That is always a possibility. In a hellish type of existence, that possibility for change is not at hand. That's why individuals born in those existences are not free to practice the Buddha Dharma or any other religion for that matter. Then we have the second type of rebirth, which is that of a preta, where the same applies. And then so sorry, I went ahead. Khenpo Rinpoche will now explain. Somehow in my memory, I was just going to list the rest because we've gone through the list during the preparations for the lecture, but Khenpo Rinpoche hadn't gotten that far. My memory failed me, so sorry.
Penna Yidag Nesung as a gesture na young, should do a decam yomare, Tundugnes gesture in a young, Nazo, should do a Lazan Kangamaroa.
Dundri in a young,
yeah, Dundog should do Shegamare, should do Kamgiamare. Tene Lalo gesture na young, Penna Lalo sink the candageres and Lomba Korang Kamshi la young. Chöle Sinchulo devs. Church Tomasan made devs. Brig Kamshila. That in red long Bajib Jeva in a Lalo Chevere. They in Jimmy Namba in Gogiam, Chulu Zam Yichemevich.
So, number 2 in this list of the first set of 8 is that of a rebirth as a preta, and the same applies here, even though the suffering of those in the land of pretas is lesser than the suffering experienced in various hellish existences. There is suffering to the degree where again it's not possible. There is no possibility for changing the circumstances, and therefore the individual here isn't able to practice the path, the Buddhist path, or any other religion for that matter. Then we have the third kind of rebirth, which is that of an animal. The same applies here. The suffering is lesser than in the previous 2 types of existence. However, the circumstances are such that an animal, because of a low capacity intellectual-wise, because of the circumstances of a rebirth as an animal and so on, do not give the possibility of practicing the Buddhist path or any other religion. Tene lalo erego. Lalo di shipa erego.
Lalo di ena gena yivastisha.
Okay, then there is the fourth type of rebirth, which is that of a so-called God. It's
no, Lalo.
Ne, Laziness po shipare. ngapare.
Tigin Chenane, Nava Yungre Dendela, Yibala Yungre Dendela, Nava Jano Jatu Giginga.
Tene ngekare gyurbore.
Navas Junan Disarava, Lalo Jur.
Lalo Dangpo.
Lalo Tangbo Jur, Nipa de Hatseripo.
Sorry, that will be number 5. Now, Khenpo Rinpoche bases his explanation on the commentary to the 37 practices authored by Professor Senpaji. Now, he lists the next as number 4. However, in other commentaries, the listing is differently, but it doesn't really matter. Just so that you know that number 4 in some commentaries is listed as the existences or the existence of or the rebirth of a specific type of God. Here, that one is moved to number 5, and number 4 here is that of rebirth in an uncivilized land, as it were. And this is a reference to rebirth among a tribe or in a community where the social context is such that social customs and the like do not include any type of religion. It's the kind of tribalism, as it were, where religion is not at hand at all. So the community in question is a community divorced of any type of belief in or interest in or even knowledge of a religion. Tadi Shiparavan.
Yeah, Yiba, Nava the Latserin Buche. Then
Mare. Shipa de Lalo Re Songsoga.
Lalo Che.
Tangapa de
Latserimpo.
And then number 5 in this list is rebirth as a specific type of God. A God is a non-human, belongs to a class of non-human beings who are called gods. Primarily because their circumstances are circumstances of great pleasure, good circumstances, God-like circumstances. And there is a specific subtype here who has an outstandingly long lifespan. Which then, because of the pleasurable circumstances, is spent or wasted in distraction, and therefore these individuals, because of pleasurable circumstances, are not free to practice the Buddhist path, or any other religion for that matter. Then we have number 6 in this list of 8, which is rebirth as an individual with a so-called wrong view.
Then this song you do Karsong to Sena, Naram me lutin Yakuch top deva in the young. Landella Yichi Chunimenki. Jewa Mapsila Yichi Chunimenki, Tendajil Lokta Sere Sungto.
So examples here would be rebirth as a human being, but with a mindset that has no acceptance whatsoever of the workings of the law of karma, cause and effect, of the principle of reincarnation and the like. It's someone whose mindset cannot at all relate to these perspectives. These and many other perspectives. And there are many people in the world like that. For example, many highly accomplished scientists of today have no acceptance whatsoever of the principle of reincarnation. To them, to many of them, not all, but to many of them, the principle of reincarnation is false, simply.
Then
there is number 7 in this list of 8, which is about rebirth in a world system where a Buddha has not appeared. Meaning there is no availability at all of a Buddhist path.
Then
a person reborn in a world system like that, even though his living circumstances may be good, there is no availability of teachings such as the teachings on cause and effect, the principle of reincarnation, and so on and so forth. So there is simply no opportunity whatsoever in a world system like that to come in contact even with those teachings.
And
there are, Buddhist cosmology explains, many world systems like that. Even in our world, where a Buddha has appeared, Buddha Shakyamuni, the historic Buddha of our era, there are in many corners of our own world areas where people have never even heard about a Buddha or a Buddhist path. Then there is the 8th in this list of 8, which is about incomplete faculties in terms of, for example, being born as a human being who's not able to take in information, who is not able to give thought to a topic, and so on. Someone whose intellect is not very developed. It's next to impossible for that individual to relate to the teachings of the sacred Buddha Dharma or any other religion. So that's just one example. So if one is a person not affected by any of these 8 perspectives, then one should rejoice in that fact.
Yenaya. Tachewa Jematanga, Mekampe Nendi Nando, Micheve Den Karno Naran Tachena.
However, one should ask oneself the question, is there anything that guarantees that I, in my next rebirth or another rebirth, isn't born in any of those circumstances?
Now,
if one in one's next rebirth is reborn in any of the 8 circumstances just listed, then one won't even know the word, the body mind. One will not even come in contact with it.
Ni sem gamba jaselali Tanjur singed the Talvat candidate into Amshola Yavu Nis Tene Tigela Sama Yapu Tangs Sam Tag gum said the Karshegor. Oh, yeah, Takia Gemma Natanjur get Talbel, you think top gona? Send the Lambegawa Chupangbe. Amchata Chete, Pangayatella, Flagogiore Mato. Megawa checking Luya Puchelingus and Karakavshidate. You may want to have Jig Marwa. Chick Chang Cha.
You may dribble me.
Yeah.
Me give a chicken.
Yeah.
So here Ngulshe Togme explains what a bodhisattva does in order to prevent an unfortunate rebirth like that in any of those 8 circumstances. He says the bodhisattva does the following. The bodhisattva carefully and attentively listens to the explanations given in terms of the body mind, with the aim of becoming able to truly generate the body mind. He then reflects carefully upon what he has heard and then meditates on the body mind, which is a process of attempting to make the body mind one's mindset. This is the practice of a bodhisattva, he says. So Khenpo Rinpoche explains that it is by way of listening, reflecting and meditating, as was explained, that a person becomes able to generate the body mind. It is through these efforts that this may be possible. For a person to, having heard the explanations and so on, but not give up non-virtuous or inappropriate behavior, inappropriate in that the behavior in question contradicts the principles of the body mind, to continue with business as usual, as it were. One behaves more or less as one has always behaved, while attempting to, as it were, meditate on the body mind, won't do, because the cause for being able to generate the body mind isn't there, while still one may not to 100% be engulfed in non-virtue, but by going back and forth, as it were, between virtue, non-virtue, not being too careful, not making proper changes as to how one thinks, one acts, and so on, will give no result whatsoever in terms of progress on the path to enlightenment. A fruit will not appear without its cause, the seed having gone through the process of growing into the fruit. That's the simile given in order to describe this. On the other hand, if the practitioner takes to heart what the explanations say, he would give up non-virtuous inappropriate actions or behavior because he understands the principle of cause and effect, the law of karma, as it were. And therefore, therefore, in his next rebirth, he will obtain a human rebirth. Now, the rebirth, in this case that of a human being, is the result of previous actions. So it's the manifest end product, as it were, of one's behavior, in this case of virtues, appropriate behavior and actions and behavior that do not contradict the body mind.
Tobna yang juntun jindrebola tenne Chaljung Jenji Mekam number J sinking the young
Next, we'll go to the second list of circumstances that make for the freedom to practice the Buddhist path, even though one may have taken a human rebirth. But a human rebirth does not automatically mean that individual having all conditions and circumstances necessary for practicing the Buddhist path. There are so many human beings out there who do not have access to the Buddhist path. Remember, in the previous list, those living in corners of our world where a Buddha has appeared, but who have never even heard of a Buddha or a Buddhist path. So just the rebirth as a human being will not make for a free and well-favored human rebirth. It's just a human rebirth. So that brings us then to the next set of 8 circumstances, but applicable to human beings. Circumstances that hinder contact with the Buddha Dharma, or rather make contact with the Buddha Dharma impossible.
Tandilla.
So then you're again looking at a rebirth which is not free and well-favored. It is a human rebirth, yes. So from the perspective of suffering, there is much less than with respect to lower existences, but there is still this defect, as it were, from the perspective of a Buddhist, namely, one does not have access to the Buddhist path, though reborn as a human being.
Charjung Jim come Sonete Nara make it thinking, make it do top. Taji Nambe Chogur Shuba in a young. Jin the Shongwa, Denzel Zazab Manona, Chun Namda Rutu Made Songe.
So this may apply even to a person who has come in contact with the Buddhist path, but who, because of circumstances, does not act according to the principles of the Buddhist path. In fact, there are many, I don't know, but there are those who profess to be Buddhists, but who do not give up non-virtuous, inappropriate behavior. So here, the first of the 8 refers to a person like that.
Tati 8 the Kandicha Deversana, Tangote, Dunga Chu Singetre.
Now, in terms of the first of the 8, I should say, what was said previously is a general explanation of all 8 listed, all 8 circumstances listed, namely that the circumstances listed may concern individuals who've never had contact or access to Buddhism at all, even though a Buddha has appeared in the world system they are reborn in, or someone who has, or those who have entered the Buddhist path, but who has not been able to relate to the teachings properly, and who have therefore act in contradiction with the Buddha's doctrine, and who have therefore cut themselves off from the true Buddhist path, as it were.
Acha. Tang adikang de dozen or so inside.
Lasso. De Zangpo de Dunga Khenpo Yöd sang.
Remendo.
Ona de nga shuyo maritanda.
Oh yeah.
Certa mirtandi. Zangpo de karere suma songo.
Oh yeah, that also the
Lasso.
Jorba Jut Kwan She go use Taina Tachemdo.
Okay.
Tunga Truk Tang say Gabla. Tunga Truk Tang.
Nga am truk.
Dungal Mare. Tunga.
Dug Nyan Mongrava.
Nyamon Tunga Truba.
Yeah.
Desha, Shedong, Demu, Najal, Chadong out.
Deutscha, Shedang, Timo, Ngajal,
Chadong.
Chado,
Yeah.
Tensunga.
Or Tan Denso Ranju la Jenji Che Ying Jenji than the Che. Did Che on do you want to song Devayina? Should do Juguma the Chevy. Do you want to send Mando Che song?
So the first of the 8 circumstances which may cut a person off from the Buddhist path is that of the so-called 5 mental poisons. The ones called desire or passion, aggression, dense mental states or ignorance, pride and jealousy. Now, of course, these afflictive, obscuring states do surface in the minds of all sentient beings at one point or another, in some more frequently than in the case of other individuals. However, we all know them. The point here is to not let oneself become overpowered by any of these states, to the point where one no longer acts in accordance with the Buddhist path.
Penna ngaranzo sosuche ore nyomung ko tokpa che gre. Che ma tha do nyomung pa tokpa singe de dukja ji ba yi ke train to ba che. Te train e ti wang do ma shorwa na ya te ke chen bure.
We're all regular people. None of us are beyond the world in terms of our development on the path, if any. Now, we will all have thoughts of passion for something, or a person, for example. We will all have thoughts of anger and the like, the 5 mental poisons just listed. However, when a thought of anger, when a thought of jealousy and the like surfaces in the mind, as a Buddhist practitioner, one should make the effort to immediately recognize that this mindset is not desirable, is in contradiction with the principles of the Buddhist path, in contradiction with the Bodhi mind, and therefore apply an antidote, do whatever one can to remedy this.
Tene, penna nyomung segen deges ko chedan rabat khande chi yorsna kuma yo ge keva rabat chi yor.
Kuma yo ge keva set?
Kuma keshe rabat. Kuma keshe de tuse chi dukjen kane ina ku shor gurwa. Nyomung ge gev lo to ku shor.
Now, these states, these 5 mental poisons, are like a very clever thief who figures out exactly how to steal or take what he desires from someone without that someone even noticing. In a similar fashion, thoughts of desire, anger, and the like robs us of the virtue we may have engaged in the past. Or robs us rather of the virtue that we're in possession of. Then we have the second circumstance, which makes a human being not free to practice the Buddhist path, which is that of an insufficient intellectual capacity.
Lun sen pöget nangla tsigni yungdwa lun singete chö kari yimi mishe kintela lön chebar. Te pongwe che do dambe chö la lobjong nam ko yo che. Mong se de lobjong che ya.
Lasso?
Lobjong che ya bo tsam ma yin ba. Ta ti laglin tu she ba. Rang lunga yi sam gela. So cher tu ba je nam ko yo che. Te mano na ya tu se tholar.
So
Darwa med.
this doesn't mean that there is no possibility at all. It's not about an insufficient intellectual capacity in terms of not being able at all to know something. It's about not making the effort. If you do not make the effort required to understand something so that you can use that something, then you don't know how to use that something, whatever that may be. Here it's about practicing the Buddhist path by listening, reflecting, and meditating. So, there may be a person who is unaware of or ignorant of any kind of Buddhist teaching. That person's intellectual capacity in the context of the Buddhist path isn't sufficient because he has no knowledge of the Buddhist path and his principles, but that doesn't mean he can't acquire that knowledge. He can. Therefore, for people who are unaware, who lack knowledge of the Buddhist path in all its details, they need to acquire that knowledge, and that is to begin with done by way of studies. One studies Buddhism or the Buddha Shakyamuni's doctrine in order to remedy one's lack of knowledge of the Buddha's doctrine. Then that alone isn't sufficient in order to make progress on the path to enlightenment. One also needs to know how to use what has been taught to one, so that one isn't foggy in one's mind as to how a practice should be done, for example. It's a matter of removing the fog of uncertainty and not knowing in terms of how to apply the teachings one has listened to.
Perna chö shebate rang lanin to makal bayina. Rang nyamning get chet manang bayina shinchu lo shorna pe nyenga sabur.
Now, if one doesn't, in addition to studies, also learn how to use on the path what one has learned, then there are various risks one may encounter or that may happen.
Penna pearl songhua tarta chö song yin chang. Tene tarta chö yang lama dabota geshe Khenpo sundaji yin na yang chui jin de nyamne ma she war tene mema yi top din shida yue de bar che song tende lalin de matar ba.
In old Tibet and in today's Tibet, the Buddhist Tantras is the most frequent perspective of Buddhist practice. The Buddhist Tantras spread to that extent, the extent that the majority of Tibetans are practitioners of the Buddhist tantras. You have many lamas, you have geshes, you have khenpos. There are varying positions, as it were, with a title. The title pointing to the qualities someone have, or rather the education on the Buddhist path someone has trained in and accomplished. A lama is usually known as an individual primarily concerned with meditation practice. Then you have a geshe or a khenpo, primarily known as an individual who've emphasized education to a great extent. But that doesn't mean the Lama has ignored education, or that the Geshe or Khenpo has ignored meditation practice. It's not like that. It's more about what has been emphasized in terms of training on the path. Now, of course, in Old Tibet, as in all other Buddhist countries, there would be members of the clergy, as it were, who had not paid sufficient attention to removing the fog which prevents one from clearly knowing exactly how to use what one has studied or learned. Here, in terms of the Buddhist tantras, and that in some cases resulted in unfortunate rebirths as very powerful non-human beings who in some cases had a mindset bent on non-virtue rather than virtue. And this type of unfortunate rebirth happened simply because the practitioner in question didn't take the care necessary for preventing that sort of thing to happen. One has to find out all the details as to the methods that one uses as a Buddhist practitioner in order to prevent this sort of thing from happening.
Lumong tani sumbate dujsen sengedere. Dujsen sengede kandeje kogu yorosana. Jetang around Sonsola, Duje, Senge Kaja Shagiore. Tandi Katula Mixalge, Tanda, Nyamo Bedu Tang, Pai Pui Duge, Ranju the Sems, Rang, Sempu the Simpson Oina, Chödrak Marwa.
Pai Pui de Cha Soko
Mare Pen, the young Japan Soko Yet.
Là Pui de.
Yeah.
De la de Chayepa.
Ta Tel Gila, Nyamung Dute, Dasatiche. Tene Tele Chicken go corner de Naranza.
Pui de go Korea de
Go Korea. Just say that the designers again to the light Pui Dudo. They didn't go corner de Tate. Tangbo nyo go to Tangi or and you have the Pesha Saga, then a busy child. Teacher do you have the possess to that?
Number 3, yes. Well, if one translates the sense of the name, it would amount to a mindset in the grip of non-virtue. Both in Sanskrit and in Tibetan, the name for this sort of thing is what one in this part of the world in previous times would refer to as a demon. However, the demon in question is not a matter of some demonic individual. Here it's a metaphor for what one could refer to as a demonic mindset, in that the mindset in question turns the attention away from the Buddhist path, from the Bodhi mind and the like. There is a traditional categorization of 4 such demons or demonic forces, however one wants to phrase it. 2 of them are concerned in terms of the third of these 8 in the second list, which is about a mindset in the grip of non-virtue, in the grip of a demonic force, for example, passion or attachment or wanting. Now, the second of the 2 relevant here from the list of 4 demonic forces is that of distraction. Now, it's referred to in the Tibetan as the pleasures of godly individuals. So the Tibetan name godly individual, or the children of the gods, however one wants to phrase it, it amounts to the same. It's a metaphor for distraction. Now, these existences, godlike existences, their hallmark, as it were, is that of distraction and desire for pleasures, sensual pleasures. Now, if we put that into the context of human beings, Khenpo Rinpoche gives the context of designers and their products, primarily clothing designers and their products. You also have that in terms of the world of perfumes. There are new scents designed every year. People are exposed to them in shops and become preoccupied with spraying themselves with them every day. So it's, to begin with, desire for owning the scent, the cosmetic cream, the clothing,
good food,
cars and motorbikes are perhaps more frequent among men, who knows. Anyway, you get the idea. There is the initial desire for something, which then becomes a distraction, to the extent where people are in the grip of making money so that they can afford to buy what they desire. And that sort of lifestyle is a lifestyle where the person is primarily in the grip of non-virtue. destructive forces from the perspective of the Bodhi mind and the Buddhist path. Because in consequence of this, there is no time to practice. You have to work all day long. You may perhaps even have to take an extra job in order to be able to purchase what your mind desires. And then you have to make time for using it, exposing it to others, showing what you have, how you smell, what car you drive, what not. So a life may easily be spent in just one outdrawn long distraction. And that's what's meant here. Even though you have obtained a human rebirth, it's spent in this way. It's from the Buddhist perspective, it's just a waste of time. It is meaningless.
Cái năng ăn cho chúng tôi, giang đồ chỉ sang cái yang yang năng用, du sinh cái thế coi ra, chỉ đông bắc đục trái yung cái, ngô là rasho yung đinh cái, khăn some member đinh cái, thế đấy chỉ cái yung mà đó, thế đấy chỉ yung vậy nó truyền được sốc rồi, du sinh cái cho nó chỉ được ra nó yung rồi, zoom dễ ba, chỉ hiểm ba, ra nhiều mà, càng cái du rồi đấy rồi đó, thar bát đủ bal.
Khenpo explains that very often during his lifetime, the previous Karmapa told his followers that a demon is not something with an ugly face and horns on top of the head and flames of fire coming out of the mouth. If it was that simple, it would be quite easy to escape the demon. One could just figure out how to get away from this unpleasant individual and save oneself. No, he said, it's about pleasant experiences, pleasant objects that trigger desire for them, etc., etc. The process just explained in brief. He explained that it's attractive appearances, pleasant sounds and the like, who are or that are the demons that will prevent spending one's life meaningfully.
That's so. Du che sin lelo chen thang song ade.
Then we come to number 4 in this list of 8, which is simply about laziness.
That laziness sinking de la yang cancer shi yo the. But ngaran so laziness se ka mele de thinking chi la laziness se ge yo wa. Chetang ko tang che bi. Ta te re te lazy re te yin ya ko tang yin chi ge ne lelo li ye wa yue de ba de lelo li ye wa che yang de shawa ngi yin la lelo sin ken te dik be she shawa she ba lo zun ju dang dang ba chi lo song ma to ko nye ding ke jir sa wa ma re yang chi jilu dang ni nye be lelo song ha re lelo li ye wa sum yong ge
jilu
Dani nyebe lelo.
Dani nyebe.
Ya, nga keta kanga drup tu kumare, nga chue drup tu kumare, nga chi lutin yina duwa chire, nga nyong kumare, thang yue kumare, nga rang nyele xie de lelo re sung re.
Laziness, when one hears this word, one usually thinks of a person who does nothing. This is how most people in their minds define laziness. However, that may not be the case. One could say it's a type of laziness, someone who supposedly doesn't do much during the day. who in the minds of others is a person spending the day leisurely, not doing anything, as it were. Here, that's not really what is referred to, or the kind of laziness referred to. Laziness here is spoken of as two types of laziness. Laziness in terms of, for example, practicing the Buddhist path, meaning not doing that, and instead being preoccupied with non-virtuous actions. It may be a very active person, someone who has a great deal of stamina and who does things all the time. This is the lazy person, because the things he does are primarily non-virtuous, even though it's about a person who is very active. According to Buddhism, this person is lazy. Lazy in terms of practicing virtue. So the person who doesn't do much, perhaps, may not be the lazy person in this context. That's not how laziness is defined. Then you have the second type of laziness, which is about the mindset where there is the discouraging of oneself all the time. Thinking of oneself as an unable person. Oh, I can't do this, and oh no, I will not be able to accomplish anything. And it's someone who puts himself down all the time, therefore suppresses himself, prevents himself from instead practicing virtue. So laziness is to be understood like that in this context, in the context of a condition which prevents someone from practicing the Buddhist path, even though that could have been possible if he had made another choice. So it's a matter of the choices people make, because as a human being, there is always a choice. So it's the choice of either being active in terms of a non-virtuous lifestyle, or showing contempt for your own capacity and therefore preventing yourself from really doing things. That's the condition which makes, or the two conditions that make human beings not losing their, or rather make human beings losing the opportunity they could have had to practice the Buddhist path. The present Karmapa, Trinletaye Dorje, very often gives the advice that one should be confident, one should be brave enough to do what the Buddhist path suggests that one should do. One should think there is nothing, or one should rather ask oneself the question, he says, why wouldn't I attain Buddha, the enlightened state? What is it that could possibly prevent me from doing that? Because all of us possess the Tathagata heart.
Jinres sing the sang ye, none de sang my yet. Can't chas on the not pop maybe Junsen ten chas or some.
Ask yourself the question, why is Chenrezig enlightened and I'm not? Well, a very probable answer is one didn't have the confidence or the stamina to really do what is necessary in order to attain enlightenment. That's all.
But Yesha got down song. Bed do such a bayanas. When asses suicide singing mid so shit to be loho orders. Not the song yet to loho the Yaksat in the Korea song door.
He mentioned in the Karmapa, mentioned in a recent advice. Ask yourself the question, why do I not have the bravery members of ISIS do have? They are prepared to die for their cause. Now, of course, this is not a good cause. However, they have the bravery it takes to do what is required in terms of the choice they made, the path they follow. Why, therefore, should I not have the bravery it takes to attain enlightenment? If they can do that, why can't I do my thing? The one I claim to strive for. So, lazy or not lazy is more about right or wrong choices, as it were. It's not necessarily about sitting around doing nothing, and that means laziness. Laziness means not making the right choice and the efforts required to do what one claims one does.
Lesson. Sunam de damje zegbanye tamne nyebe danam pamje cheganaje balab trobaye sigbe solen rowa sho.